Hello friends, welcome to Ecoholics YouTube channel. My name is Avinash Agarwal, and in this video I'll be discussing with you economics current affairs for 15th October 2024. I have selected three very important articles from the Mint newspaper for today's discussion. First article speaks about the 2024 Nobel Prize in Economics, which speaks about the role of institutions in shaping economic prosperity. Second article speaks about how demographic and technological factors are bringing about a change towards automation and artificial intelligence, and what are the challenges and opportunities the same presents for India as an economy, as a society, as a country, and how we can respond, whether we should focus on employment, whether we should focus on efficiency, what should be our approach. That is what the second article discusses. The third article presents some data points regarding poverty in India between 2015 and 2023 and shows that how timely government interventions and appropriate government interventions have helped in controlling poverty in India. So as you can understand, all these three topics are very important from exam point of view, right? So I would request you to please not just listen to this lecture and take this note from the Ecoholics app, but also do some kind of answer writing practice, because when the actual examination will ask you a question, you will not be able to answer unless you have practiced it prior. So please practice. Practice is what is going to actually help you in clearing the examination. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask. I can see the live chat, so I'll be able to take up your questions on a live basis if there are any questions, right? So let us start with our discussion. So the first article is about Nobel Prize in Economics. Okay, so let's see what has happened over here. Now artificial intelligence, ये जो है कई सारे दिस ईयर के नोबेल प्राइजेस के अंदर इट्स अ रनिंग थीम, इट्स अ कांस्टेंट थीम. अब जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस 2024 प्राइज इन फिजिक्स, आई डोंट वांट टू डिस्कस दिस इन डिटेल बिकॉज दिस इज नॉट माय टॉपिक, बट 2024 प्राइज इन फिजिक्स, द नोबेल प्राइज इन केमिस्ट्री, कहीं ना कहीं everything was associated with artificial intelligence. For instance, John Hopfield as well as Geoffrey Hinton. Geoffrey Hinton is considered the godfather of artificial intelligence or something like that, right? So they laid down the foundations for AI advances, right? And Nobel for chemistry, that was shared by University of Washington biochemist David Baker, right, for protein design work using digital tools, and Demis Hassabis, John Jumper of Google's DeepMind for development of AlphaFold, which is basically an AI tool जो कि प्रिडिक्ट कर सकता है प्रोटीन स्ट्रक्चर्स को. सो यू कैन सी एवरीवेयर समवेयर और द अदर एआई इज प्लेइंग अ रोल. Coming to the question of economics, right? So the Nobel Prize has been awarded to Darren Acemoglu, Simon Johnson of MIT, James Robinson of University of Chicago, right? And the important thing, very important thing over here, which any examiner would love to discuss with you, would be that what is the role of institutions and how institutions, affect or create prosperity or don't create prosperity, right? So Acemoglu and Robinson, they have authored this very famous book called Why Nations Fail, right? And in this book as well as their work, it basically revolves around this idea that extractive institutions, what is the impact of these extractive institutions, and inclusive institutions, what is the impact of these inclusive institutions, right? So when we say institutions, what do I mean by institutions? Institutions are rules, institutions are restraints, right, which is governing human interaction. So let us say that there is the ruled, okay, and there are the masses, or there are the rulers, okay. So what is the level of interaction, or how is the interaction governed between the ruled and the rulers? What is the interaction, or what are the norms of interaction between, let us say, the so-called classes and the masses? What is the rules? What are the rules, or what are the dynamics of interaction between the have-nots of power and the haves of power? Because in every society there are elites who control institutions, who have power, right, as against those who don't have power. So rules or restraints are very important, right? So the idea over here is that they decide which nations are rich, which nations are poor, based upon looking at their per capita income, right? They look at the gross inequality between nations, right? Let's say developed countries on the one hand and extremely poor countries on the other hand, right? and they bring out this particular idea over here, right? That the per capita GDP of richest 20 countries is about 30 times that of the poorest 20% of the countries. Okay, so obviously we are aware of this. This is not something which is going to be eye-popping, right? Now we need to understand what's happening over here, right? So they studied colonization, they studied the experience of colonization, okay, and they came out with this idea, right, which they eventually supported with research and empirical data, that if colonizers were able to settle down, the outcome was different. If the colonizers were not able to settle down, outcomes were different. Like for example, Britishers came to India, right? They went to US as well. In India, they didn't settle down. In US, they did settle down. In India, the outcome is known to you. In US, the outcome is known to you, right? So where tropical diseases, hostile environment was not helpful, right? So they didn't settle down and they created extractive institutions, right? Extractive institutions which basically, exploited the masses, enriched a small elite over there, and transferred significant amount of wealth towards their own countries, right? So in these geographies where extractive institutions were created, so you see that these countries became very poor. These once wealthy countries, they became very poor, and a prime example could be India, where settlers could survive, right? And they could multiply. They established themselves over there, and they created inclusive institutions, right? And made sure that there was, rights to property, rights to justice, and so on. And US is a very good example of this. Of course, this doesn't really address the kind of treatment that red Indians got in the United States of America, or the Aboriginals got in Australia, right? So I'm sure that red Indians would disagree, and I'm sure that Aboriginals would disagree that because these colonizers, when they settled in US and Australia, they didn't respect the rights of the natives by any stretch of imaginations. They respected their own rights rather, right? So be that as it may, right? This is relevant even today, right? This is relevant even today, right? That if you have extractive institutions right now, okay, it's not going to be helpful, right? So that's what we need to kind of push against. Okay. So the idea is that if you can push your rule makers, if we can push our rule makers in India to institute equitable rules for better resource allocation, that would be helpful. If we can't, then we will get trapped in poverty, right? So we need to push for reforms which enable the establishment of equitable institutions, right? That is what is required. That is what I understand out of this entire discussion, which is relevant for me, right? So the idea is that inclusive institutional frameworks is what we need to support. Now, why do we want to link this to artificial intelligence, right? This is the time when we can create a massive level of shared prosperity. This is the time when we can grow leaps and bounds on the basis of productivity. But if I am going leaps and bounds through productivity, through technology, right, a lot of people are also going to be on the losing end of the bargain. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs, right? Global disparities will need to be first addressed. The threats of global disparity will first need to be addressed. Now, like for example, if let us say immigrant jobs are going to be lost, natives will not care, right? Or if jobs will be lost in some third country, right, there will not be any immediate impact on our country, we wouldn't care, right? But if the impact is on our own country, the impact is on our own population, then we will care, right? And that's what we need to think about over here. We need to make sure that the productivity boost that artificial intelligence can give us, right, it should be employed in such a manner that inequality goes down, equity goes up, shared prosperity goes up, and only then will there be bipartisan and broad-based support for development and deployment of these technologies, right? So the institutional framework that needs to be there for the 21st century, forget about what happened in the past. The institutional framework that needs to be there for the 21st century, it needs to be an inclusive one, and it cannot be an extractive one, because if it is an extractive one, there will be a very violent reaction against it, which will not be helpful for anybody. So this is a very fundamental, very basic idea that I want you to develop upon, right? यहाँ से आपको जो है सारी चीजें और ज्यादा अच्छे तरीके से डेवलप करनी है, ठीक है? Moving ahead to the next article, it again speaks about GenAI, and I'm reasonably confident कि इस बार के एग्जाम के अंदर GenAI is going to play a very prominent role, looking at the way Nobel prizes have been handed out, right? अब इंडिया के अंदर when we started the planning process, right, we had four broad-based goals. First goal was growth, second goal was modernization, third goal was self-reliance, and the fourth goal was equity. Somewhere or the other, right, we wanted to adopt technology so that efficiency, productivity can go up. At the same time, we wanted to create employment so that equity, etc., can be also be in the right direction. But if you adopt technology, you may not be able to create employment, and if you try to create too much employment, you may not be wanting to adopt very fancy technology, right? So somewhere or the other, there has always been this tug of war, okay? And this tug of war is something that we have been trying to deal with 1947 downwards, and we are dealing about the same tug of war. So this is the same old topic in a new bottle. It's not essentially a completely new topic or something like that, is what I want you to understand, ठीक है? So यहाँ पर आपको ये समझना है कि GenAI जो है, it is a double-edged sword, and how do we use GenAI? That is what we need to understand, ठीक है? So अगेन वी आर जस्ट पिकिंग अप फ्रॉम द प्रीवियस डिस्कशन, जो हमारा पहले वाला टॉपिक था उसी को यूज करके हम आगे जाने लग रहे हैं, राइट? सो डेमोग्राफिक फैक्टर्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इफ यू आर अ कंट्री विच इज गेटिंग ओल्ड, इफ यू आर अ कंट्री जिसके पास पॉपुलेशन कम होने लग रही है, इफ यू आर अ कंट्री जहां पर यूथ की अवेलेबिलिटी कम होने वाली है, एंड इफ यू स्टिल वांट टू मेक श्योर दैट योर आउटपुट डज नॉट डिक्लाइन, सो यू विल बी एक्सट्रीमली इन फेवर ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी. You will be extremely in favor of, you know, artificial intelligence capabilities getting developed and making sure that your output levels remain in the right direction. But if you are a country where surplus labor is there, if you are a country where unemployment is there, then you wouldn't want technology to take away the jobs of your youth so easily, right? So demographic factors are very, very important in this entire discussion, right? So that's what we are trying to discuss. What is the job security requirement that you have, right? What is the and that depends upon the societal factors, and we need to contextualize everything in the context of India, right? अब जैसे for example ले लीजिए, right, कि a lot of countries in the east, they are also leapfrogging on automation. So if you look at South Korea, they have 1000 robots you know, per 1 lakh population, which is the highest in the world, ठीक है? Japan is very close, China is coming very close, right? So this is what is happening in a lot of eastern countries, right? So the idea over here is that what has happened is that there is unprecedented development in technology. There is unprecedented development in technology that has happened when it comes to natural language processing, when it comes to computer vision, right? If you can elaborate upon these technologies, fantastic. If you can't, it's okay, right? So because of the fact that machines have been able to master both these capabilities, right? So there is explosive growth in autonomous tools and autonomous driving vehicles and autonomous robots. And once robots can start driving, they can do a lot of other things as well. They can do a lot of other things as well. Repetitive tasks on the shop floor can be done by robots and so on and so forth, right? So that is something. So this unprecedented development in technology, we had not seen this coming. Honestly speaking, we had not seen this coming and getting developed so well so quickly, right? And it is not as if that there is a debate only in India. If you see recent developments in US, so US dock workers, US script writers, right, US auto unions, US के truck drivers, they have been protesting, their unions have been protesting, and they have been saying that, boss, we need proper legislation because we fear that our jobs are going to go away. हमारी prosperity जो है हमारे को खतरे के अंदर नजर आने लग रही है. So even before your Indian truck driver starts worrying, US truck drivers are very much up in arms, right? अगर आप recent development in Eastern Asia देखोगे, so China is going absolutely ballistic over the development of these technologies. So जो Chinese car makers है, they are going in a very big way in terms of autonomous driving capabilities. अब जैसे बाइडू है, पोनी एआई है, बाइडू एंड पोनी एआई, सो दे आर एट अ वेरी एडवांस लेवल ऑफ क्रिएशन ऑफ ऑटोनॉमस ड्राइविंग कैपेबिलिटीज. चाइना की जो गवर्नमेंट है वो प्रमोट कर रही है इस चीज को. 20 cities in China, they have policies supporting various kinds of driving tests by autonomous vehicles. 60 enterprises in China, 60 enterprises in China ने लाइसेंस ले लिया है ऑटोनॉमस व्हीकल्स के टेस्टिंग वगैरह करवाने के लिए, राइट. 27 डिफरेंट चाइनीज डिजाइंड ह्यूमनाइड रोबोट्स को जो है शोकेस करा गया था वर्ल्ड रोबो कॉन्फ्रेंस के अंदर, राइट. ये रोबोट्स इंडस्ट्री में काम कर सकते हैं, कैलीग्राफी कर सकते हैं, फूड डिलीवरी कर सकते हैं, हाउस होल्ड कोर्स कर सकते हैं, चाय बना सकते हैं, राइट. रोबो बैरिस्टाज आर कमिंग अप, जहां पे केवल केवल रोबोज है बीजिंग एंड सियोल के अंदर, राइट. ये कॉस्ट लोअर कर रहे हैं बैरिस्टाज के अंदर और एफिशिएंसी इंप्रूव कर रहे हैं बैरिस्टाज के अंदर, राइट. कोरिया के अंदर जो है रोबो डेंसिटी इंक्रीज टू 1000 यूनिट्स पर 10,000 एम्प्लॉइज, नॉट 1 लाख एम्प्लॉइज, 10,000 एम्प्लॉइज. एंड दिस इज क्रेजी अमाउंट ऑफ नंबर, ये आपको याद रखना चाहिए. This kind of robo density is something that we didn't really see it coming so soon, so high, right. So the idea over here is that हर जगह जो है यहाँ पर ये डेवलपमेंट हो रहे हैं. कंज्यूमर्स के लिए ये बेनिफिशियल है बिकॉज कंज्यूमर विल गेट लोअर प्राइस, कंज्यूमर विल गेट एफिशिएंट सर्विसेज, फास्टर सर्विसेज, इनोवेटिव सर्विसेज एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. कंज्यूमर्स के लिए बेनिफिशियल है. बट द सेम कंज्यूमर इज ऑल्सो समबडीज वर्कर, राइट. आज मैं कंज्यूमर हूँ बट मैं कहीं पर वर्कर भी हूं. तो अगर इफ आई लूज माई जॉब इन अ फैक्ट्री एंड देन इफ बिकॉज ऑफ एआई लेट्स से आई गेट goods and services at half the price and faster, but I've also lost my job, right. So I am the same person over here. This is what you need to understand. I am the same person over here who is benefiting as a consumer and who is losing out as a worker. Now you need to make sure that at an individual level my benefit is greater than my loss, and that is when you will see that there will be a broad based consensus which will help in the adoption of artificial intelligence, right. आपको ये चीज को बहुत अच्छे से हाईलाइट करना है कि हम लोग सब कंज्यूमर्स एंड प्रोड्यूसर साइमल्टेनियस है, राइट. सो द आइडिया इज कि अगर आप ड्राइवरलेस व्हीकल से आपको बेनिफिट मिलेगा, आपका कॉस्ट कम हो जाएगा, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, राइट. बट आपकी जॉब भी तो जा सकती है उसकी वजह से कहीं ना कहीं, तो आपकी इनकम भी तो कम हो सकती है कहीं ना कहीं. तो ये जो बेनिफिट आपको मिलेगा वो आपको लॉस के साथ कंपनसेट करके देगा कि नहीं देगा, राइट. सो दैट इज व्हाट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड. सो देयर इज दिस ह्यूज टेंशन between benefits of reduced costs and improved services. So on the one hand these are the benefits and on the other hand these are the losses कि वर्कर के ऊपर इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा. तो कंज्यूमर को फायदा क्या होगा और वही कंज्यूमर जब वर्कर है तो उसके ऊपर नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा, राइट. लाइक आई सेड इन द प्रीवियस आर्टिकल कि अगर लॉसेस हमारे कंट्री में नहीं है, बाजू वाले कंट्री में है, राइट. अब जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल देयर आर लॉट ऑफ कंट्रीज विच आर विटनेसिंग डेमोग्राफिक विंटर. व्हाट इज डेमोग्राफिक विंटर? कि वहां पर बर्थ रेट इतना लो हो चुका है, राइट, कि जो वहां की जो पॉपुलेशन है दैट इज स्टार्टेड डिक्लाइनिंग. So there is going to be a 5, 10, 15, 20, 25% decline in those countries का population. Now those countries will have two clear choices. Either they can import labor or they can depend upon these technologies more and more. And my sense is that they will choose this route. जो आपकी नॉर्दर्न यूरोपियन इकोनॉमीज है, जो आपकी ईस्ट एशियन इकोनॉमीज है सच एज जापान, why would they want to kind of create a threat for their own cultures, for their own civilizations by importing immigrants? Rather they would depend upon technology, right. Time will tell, right. But the idea is that there are going to be countries who will benefit a lot from these, there are going to be countries which are not going to benefit. So you as a country need to decide that what is it that you want, right. So if your large scale local jobs are threatened, right, so that's a problem. अब जैसे नितिन गडकरी है, he said very clearly कि इंडिया के अंदर ऑटोनॉमस व्हीकल्स की एंट्री को हम नहीं अलाउ करेंगे, बट दैट इज अ पॉलिसी स्टांस टुडे. Why? Because they know what will be the impact of the same, right. So we need to think about it, right. अब India needs to benefit from this GenAI का revolution, this GenAI का development, right. Whether it is hardware, whether it is software, right, we need to be at the forefront of this entire revolution, right. We have millions of people who are employed in IT enabled services sectors, right. We cannot ignore these developments, right. So what we should try to do over here is, right, that we need to develop technological expertise in these fields, right? Now, whether it is Gen AI or whether it is anything else, we need to develop a technological and technical expertise. We need to start creating cost-effective innovations for the global south, right? Which are helpful for everybody. We need to create solutions for the cost-conscious segment in the developed world, right? That is what we have to try to do, right? So whether it is healthcare or mobility, we need to develop capabilities, okay? Using AI innovation, we need to retool and reposition ourselves, our sectors in this direction, right? And that's what we need to do. Okay. So again, the problems, some articles they explain the problems really well, some articles they explain the solution really well, and in all honesty, this article is discussing the problem very well, right? It has discussed the problem, एंड आई बिलीव दैट ये जो आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग मिली है यहाँ पर वर्कर्स और कंज्यूमर्स वाली, कि एज अ कंज्यूमर यू कैन बेनिफिट फ्रॉम एआई बट एज अ वर्कर यू विल लूज, सो यू हैव टू मेक श्योर दैट द कॉस्ट बेनिफिट एनालिसिस इन योर फेवर. पॉलिसी मेकर्स नीड टू डू दैट. एंड आपको जो यहाँ पर अंडरस्टैंडिंग मिली है कि वाई सर्टन कंट्रीज आर गोइंग टू favor the development of Gen AI and deployment of Gen AI and why certain other countries will not. तो ये जो आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग मिली है यहाँ पर, this is your biggest takeaway from this article over here. So please make sure that आप ये सारी चीजों को यूज कर रहे हैं एंड अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग को ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम डेवलप करने लग रहे हैं. थर्ड आर्टिकल वेरी क्विकली, let's speak about poverty. So guys, there is this institution by the name, by the उसका short form is price, right? उस institution का short form is price. It's an India based research institution, right? And they have come out with these numbers. So let's assume that these numbers are okay, right? So what are their numbers? ठीक है. So ये लोग बता रहे हैं extreme poverty की कहानी, right? ये लोग बता रहे हैं कि जो international poverty line है $1.9, right? पर पर्सन पर डे, तो उसके नीचे अगर आप हो तो आप पॉवर्टी में हो, उसके ऊपर आप हो तो आप पॉवर्टी में नहीं हो, राइट? दिस इज द इंटरनेशनल पॉवर्टी लाइन एस्टैब्लिश्ड बाय द वर्ल्ड बैंक, राइट? So what are their numbers? Okay, very quickly I am going to wrap up this discussion on this article. So first number that you need to keep in mind is this number, right? Second number that you need to keep in mind is this number, ठीक है? Third number that you have to keep in mind is this number. Fourth number that is important is this number, right? So what are these numbers? तो ये जो पहला नंबर है, ये 2015-16 के अंदर how many people in India are living in extreme poverty? So as per them the number is, let's say 100 million or 11% of the rural population. Pandemic के दौरान क्या होता है? This number doubles up to 200 million, which is around 22% of the rural population. अर्बन एरियाज के अंदर जो है 7.2 मिलियन अर्बन रेसिडेंट्स एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी में रह रहे हैं. दिस नंबर बिकम्स नियरली 11 टाइम्स टू 89 मिलियन और 18% ऑफ द अर्बन पॉपुलेशन, राइट? इससे आपको ये समझ में आना चाहिए, इससे आपको ये समझ में आना चाहिए, राइट, कि हाउ मेनी पीपल आर जस्ट वन किक अवे फ्रॉम पॉवर्टी और वन पुश अवे फ्रॉम पॉवर्टी, दैट इफ दिस इज द पॉवर्टी लाइन और मैंने एक छोटा सा मतलब जो है ना धक्का मार दिया तो ये लोग पॉवर्टी में चले जाएंगे. दिस इज व्हाट द प्रॉब्लम इज. वेदर दिस आर्टिकल के नंबर्स आर करेक्ट और नॉट, द गवर्नमेंट अग्रीज विद इट और नॉट, ये आर्टिकल का जो सेकंड इंटरप्रिटेशन बहुत ज्यादा पॉजिटिव इंटरप्रिटेशन निकल कर आएगा, वेदर दैट इज करेक्ट और नॉट, फॉरगेट ऑल ऑफ दैट. द इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग दैट इज अनडिनायबल ओवर हियर इज दैट कि थोड़ा सा लॉकडाउन लगा, थोड़ा सा जॉब आपका चला गया, थोड़ा सा इनकम के ऊपर आपकी स्केर्सिटी आई, right? Immediately you have been pushed into poverty, right? This is where our problem lies. This is the problem that we need to resolve. ठीक है? So let's discuss this article, what this article is saying. ठीक है? So the point over here is that some more numbers that you need to understand probably. So first number is this number over here. It's not difficult. Second number is this over here. ठीक है? Then the third number is this. Fourth number is this, right? And fifth number is this. Right? So these are the numbers. Now what are these numbers? Let me again explain it to you. Right? So the point is कि कुल मिला के 2015-16 के अंदर टोटली इंडिया के अंदर 110 million people were living, let's say, in extreme poverty, which is around, let's say, 8% of the population. This number increases to 289 million in a pandemic, जो कि मैंने आपको ऊपर बताया, right? 200 in rural areas plus let's say 89 in urban areas, कुल मिला के 289, ये नंबर मैंने आपको एक्सप्लेन कर दिया है. ठीक है? अब पैंडेमिक आया और पैंडेमिक चला गया, उसके बाद जो है एट द नेशनल लेवल अगर हम देखेंगे, सो देयर इज ओनली 33 बिलियन पीपल लिविंग इन पॉवर्टी और 2.2% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन. सो दिस नंबर 289 हैज बीन pulled down to 33. That is what these guys are saying. और ये रिडक्शन कैसे हुआ है एज पर देम? ये रिडक्शन हुआ है 88%, 89% का रिडक्शन हुआ है. इसको ये लोग कह रहे हैं रिमार्केबल रिकवरी, राइट. और ये रिमार्केबल रिकवरी जो है हमने करवाई है. कैसे करवाई है, राइट. अब वेदर ये नंबर 289 से 33 हुआ है या 133 हुआ है, राइट. what is as per them helping the helpful factors, right, which is government intervention. So what are the government interventions which are helpful, right? So these are the government interventions that you have to mention in your answers, right? That Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, जिसने कैश ट्रांसफर दिया था, फ्री फूड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन करवाया था, मनरेगा काइंड ऑफ स्कीम्स, पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम, राइट, विच इंश्योर्स राइट टू फूड, राइट. सो ये सारे चीजें ने हमारे को हेल्प करा था, ठीक है. सो स्विफ्ट रिकवरी हुआ था कंस्ट्रक्शन एंड एग्रीकल्चर के अंदर, दैट ऑल्सो हेल्प्ड इन अ वेरी बिग वे, राइट. And the article says that we are very much on track to achieve our sustainable development goals, right? Pandemic has clearly highlighted the vulnerability of the population, which I have mentioned. Pandemic has clearly highlighted that you are one push away from poverty, right? So it is important that you should not be one push away from poverty. You as a worker, you should not be going into poverty so easily, for which we need to formalize the workforce. We need to give you social security programs, healthcare access. We need to protect you from future economic shocks, right? So इसके लिए आपके सोशल प्रोटेक्शन सिस्टम्स को स्ट्रेंथन करना पड़ेगा, सो दैट यू कैन टेक केयर ऑफ फ्यूचर शॉक्स जो कि आएंगे ही आएंगे, राइट. एंड वी डोंट वांट टू सी अ शार्प राइज इन पॉवर्टी एवरी नाउ एंड देन. So as we move towards eradication of poverty, we need to eradicate poverty once and for all, right? And these are important lessons that we should try to learn something from, right? Now whether you agree with all of these things or not, some things are very very clear. One thing that is very clear is that India के अंदर we need to make sure that ये जो above the poverty line section of our population that goes really above the poverty line. एंड सेकेंड ऑफ ऑल, जो भी इंटरवेंशन डिस्कस करे गए हैं उनको हमारे को इंप्लीमेंट करना है टू पुल मोर एंड मोर पीपल आउट ऑफ पॉवर्टी, राइट. इफ नथिंग एल्स इज ट्रू, दिस इज ट्रू. So just keep this in mind. So please do answer writing based on these three questions. I have discussed content which will help you in at least coming up to 65 to 70% of the answers requirement. Remaining 35-40% from my previous discussions, from my coming discussions, you will be able to gather, and please try to answer these questions. Otherwise, you will get a surprise in the exam which will not be a positive surprise. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. All the best. Bye bye.